Picture trying to solve an invisible, nationwide crisis, but your only tools are millions of scattered, dusty pieces of paper. Literally impossible, right? Well, for decades, that was exactly how Pakistan was trying to manage its education system. But recently, there's been an absolute game changer. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into how a government took all those fragmented, paper-based statistics and engineered a high-tech, centralized data brain from scratch. We'll explore how this new digital nervous system exposed massive blind spots and ultimately stepped up to rescue the education of millions of kids.
Here's our roadmap for today. We're going to hit 5 key stops. First, the fragmented data problem. Second, the birth of a data brain. Third, inside the PAI machine. Fourth, digitizing the nation's schools. And finally, the out-of-school crisis.
Let's kick things off with Part 1, the fragmented data problem. To really grasp why this transformation is such a big deal, we have to look at how things were before 2022. Policymakers were essentially operating blindfolded. Sure, they had records telling them how many school buildings existed, but they had absolutely no idea what was happening inside those classrooms. More importantly, they didn't know what students were actually learning. So, how do you fix an education system when you literally only have half the data? You can't. Because these information silos were totally isolated, the people in charge couldn't connect the physical infrastructure to actual learning outcomes. And that fueled a massive crisis known as learning poverty. Kids were sitting in schools, but they weren't grasping basic reading or math, all because the left hand had no idea what the right hand was doing.
Think of the legacy setup like a computer system split right down the middle into hardware and software. On the hardware side, you had a planning department called APAM, set up way back in 1982. Their entire job was just counting the physical stuff, the schools, the teachers, the enrolled students. Meanwhile, on the software side, you had NEMIS, formed in 2003, which handled the national standardized testing to see what students actually knew. Keeping these two vital institutions totally separate was, well, a fundamental flaw. I mean, you can't fix a software glitch if you have no clue what hardware it's running on, right?
For a long time, these two parallel tracks just ran side by side, planning in 1982, assessment in 2003. But as the population exploded and modern educational challenges really started piling up, the government finally woke up to the fact that this fragmented approach was completely failing. It took until April 2022 for the federal cabinet to officially pull the trigger and merge these two entities to tackle the crisis head-on.
Which brings us right into Section 2, the birth of a data brain.
That pivotal 2022 cabinet decision officially smashed the barriers between the hardware and software of Pakistan's educational planning. And from that merger, the Pakistan Institute of Education, or PI, was born. Now, it's absolutely crucial to understand that PI is not just another dusty government bureaucracy shuffling paperwork around. No, it's an autonomous federal research institution built specifically to act as the nation's single source of truth for education data. It's essentially a central nervous system designed to wipe out those historical data gaps and keep strict tabs on the country's progress toward the UN's Sustainable Development Goal 4, which is all about guaranteeing quality education.
Under the leadership of Director General Dr. Mohammad Shahid Saroya, who stepped up in April 2023, this place underwent a massive cultural shift almost overnight. They totally ditched the old reliance on bulky, backward-looking paper reports. Instead, PIE pivoted hard toward real-time digital intelligence. So rather than just writing down what happened in the past, they started using data predictively to actually shape the future of educational policy.
Let's see how they actually pull this off in Section 3, inside the PI machine.
Okay, so how exactly do you organize a national data brand across such a huge and diverse country? Well, PI runs on 4 highly specialized technical wings. You've got the Data and NEMIS wing, which stands for National Education Management Information System, and they handle the heavy IT infrastructure, running digital dashboards and satellite mapping. Then there's the Research and Policy wing, diving into complex studies like analyzing out-of-school populations and gender parity. The assessment wing designs the standardized national tests to measure what students are really learning. And finally, the training wing is all about capacity building, basically teaching district education officers how to actually understand and use all this incoming data.
To keep these wings running smoothly, PE uses the standard Government Basic Pay Scale, or BPS structure. Now, while the Director General and the directors sit at the executive levels at the top, the real engine of this entire operation is right there in the middle, at the BPS 17 level. That's where you find the research officers, the data analysts, and the IT specialists. These are the folks who are literally in the trenches, crunching the numbers, building the models, and generating the actual intelligence that makes the whole thing work.
The physical infrastructure they've set up at their Islamabad headquarters is honestly just as impressive. We aren't just talking about boring rows of cubicles here. They built a specialized data war room. It's this dedicated server hub where live national education data is visualized on massive screens. They also have a high-tech GIS lab using satellite data to physically map every single school in the entire country. Plus, there's a digital library that bridges decades of old archives with modern research, and a 200-seat auditorium designed specifically for launching national policies that are directly backed by this new intelligence.
Moving on to Section 4, digitizing the nation's schools.
Let's talk about how Pi actually uses all this tech to reveal problems that were practically invisible before. One of their biggest game changers is identifying what they call education deserts. By layering satellite mapping with complex, highly interactive dashboards, Pi takes massive amounts of raw data and makes it incredibly accessible. Thanks to some really smart user interface design, even policymakers who aren't tech experts at all can log in, filter by district, and visually pinpoint rural spots where a kid might have to walk several kilometers just to find a school. It takes abstract spreadsheets and turns them into undeniable visual maps.
And here's the data flow that makes it happen. Step 1. Local provincial systems collect the raw data right from the ground, from rural classrooms and urban centers across Punjab, Sindh, KPK, and Balochistan. Step 2. PIE acts as the ultimate integrator, pulling all that regional data into one centralized national dashboard. And Step 3. This standardized, verified data is shared with the world. This whole process cements PIE as the vital bridge that interprets the reality of Pakistani education for major global partners like UNESCO, UNICEF, and the World Bank.
Which leads us to our final part, Section 5, the out-of-school crisis.
When you finally build a machine that's capable of seeing everything, well, you have to be ready for what it's going to show you. Because what happens when a nation finally gets a complete, undeniable picture of its education system? In late 2024 and early 2025, Pi delivered exactly that. They aggregated all those provincial insights, fired up their newly merged data sets, and dropped a landmark statistical report. For the very first time, there were no data gaps left to hide behind. The national picture was finally in focus, and honestly, it was shocking.
The absolute gut punch was this one massive figure, 26 million. The data undeniably confirmed that over 26 million children in the country are currently out of school. Just let the sheer weight of that number sink in for a second. 26 million. It is a staggering reality that represents a monumental challenge for the nation's future.
But listen, this is exactly why the data brain matters so much. Hard, undeniable numbers strip away all the political cover. You can't ignore 26 million. This single data point immediately sparked a national education emergency conversation at the very highest levels of government. It directly forced the allocation of federal funding for new schools of eminence. It triggered highly targeted accelerated learning programs built specifically for girls in rural Balochistan. The data didn't just point out a problem, it literally forced immediate systemic action.
As one of our sources so powerfully put it, the story of Pi is the story of Pakistan finally using data as a weapon to fight illiteracy and learning poverty. It's incredible proof that modernizing your institutions can turn raw, fragmented numbers into a highly effective tool for national survival. And it leaves us with a really important question to think about. How effectively do the institutions in your own community utilize data to solve their most invisible crises? Something to ponder. Thanks so much for exploring this with me today.